StarRupture took me by surprise right from the first trailer, especially with how it mixes automation, survival, and first-person action in such a chaotic alien setting. The visuals, built on Unreal Engine 5, are jaw-dropping, and you can feel that Creepy Jar is taking the legacy they built with Green Hell seriously, but now betting on a more technological and dynamic universe. What caught my attention the most was the idea of ruptures, these catastrophic events that constantly change the planet. This takes the game out of the standard factory routine and turns every session into a fight against time and the environment, which for me is a huge differentiator compared to other survival automation games. The demo I had the chance to test showed a very fluid building system, with conveyor belts running only when necessary and a touch of elegance in the factory mechanics that left me wanting to spend hours setting up perfect lines. The combat also surprised me, especially when I needed to defend my base from hordes of enemies while the planet was literally catching fire around me. On the other hand, some quality of life details still seem to be in the adjustment phase, such as slightly confusing menus and some actions requiring more steps than ideal. But that's expected in a game about to enter early access, and you can sense the team is attentive to community feedback. I think StarRupture's biggest hit so far is precisely this sense of urgency and chaos. It's not just about optimizing factories, it's about surviving while the world tries to swallow you whole. This creates an adrenaline rush that few games in the genre manage to offer, and it left me curious to see how this will evolve in future updates. Creepy Jar is betting high, and even knowing the game still has a lot of growing to do, I can already imagine long co-op sessions with friends trying to keep the factories running while the planet collapses. It's a concept that blends the best of several genres, and if it continues at this pace, it could truly become a benchmark in futuristic survival. What grabbed me right away was the premise of being condemned exiles from Earth, forced to mine and produce for a faceless corporation. There is a cynicism in this narrative that I really like. You aren't a hero saving the universe. You are just a disposable cog trying to pay off a debt in a place that wants to kill you. The feeling of serving time while building complex machines creates an oppressive atmosphere, different from the optimistic exploration we see in other games of the genre. The true protagonist of the story, in my opinion, is the rupture star and the planet itself. The mechanic of cyclical catastrophes isn't just a gameplay challenge, but the engine of environmental narrative. Every time the star erupts and the planet changes, you feel like you are dealing with a living, hostile force of nature, much more dangerous than the alien monsters. It's a story told through the environment, where scars on the terrain tell you what happened before you arrived. Speaking of mystery, the demo left some interesting breadcrumbs about past civilizations or previous colonization attempts. Finding ruins and strange technologies while exploring caves reminded me a bit of the feeling of discovering secrets in Green Hell, but with an industrial sci-fi vibe. The question remains, are we the first to try to tame this place, or just the next in line to fail? However, I felt that the character's personal narrative is still a bit shallow compared to the psychological depth Creepy Jar delivered in their previous game. While in Green Hell the struggle for sanity was central, here the focus seems to be much more on industrial scale and physical survival. I hope that in the final version, they bring more layers to the protagonist, perhaps exploring isolation or the relationship with other prisoners in co-op mode. Another point that caught my attention was how the story unfolds emergently, especially in multiplayer. The story ends up being the one you and your friends create while trying to defend the base from a horde while fire consumes everything around you. It's a narrative of shared chaos, where the drama comes from a conveyor belt that stopped working at the worst possible moment, or a friend who couldn't reach the shelter in time. The critique of space corporatism is also there, between the lines. The constant demand for more resources and the company's indifference regarding your safety add a satirical flavor. You are building incredible technologies, but at the end of the day, It's just to ensure the profit continues to flow, even if the world is literally exploding. This gives a different weight to every ingot you produce. The story of StarRupture seems to be about resilience in an impossible setting. Don't expect cinematic cutscenes at every turn, but rather a narrative you piece together bit by bit while fighting not to be vaporized. If Creepy Jar manages to balance this environmental mystery with the urgency of survival, have a very rich universe to explore in 2026. The gameplay impressed me right off the bat with its balance between automation, survival, and action. It's one of those games that hooks you because every decision has weight. You can spend hours optimizing factories, but out of nowhere, the planet collapses and everything turns into chaos. This mix of pacing reminds me a bit of Satisfactory, but with an extra dose of tension and adrenaline, as if every factory were a fortress in constant danger. Base construction and dismantling are fast and intuitive, which greatly facilitates experimentation. You don't waste time with boring menus or confusing inventory systems, and this makes creativity flow naturally. It's easy to set up a production line, test, dismantle, and redo, all with a flow that left me wanting to keep adjusting every detail, like assembling a giant puzzle. The automation system also stands out. Conveyor belts only work when necessary, which brings a touch of elegance and realism to the game. You don't see resources circling aimlessly, and this gave me a sense of greater control over every process. The challenge lies in optimizing to the max, because when the rupture comes, you need to be ready to deal with the chaos. Exploration is another strong point. The planet changes constantly, so you need to leave the base to gather resources, discover new areas, and find hidden secrets. This creates a dynamic that goes beyond build and automate. You need to be attentive to the environment, as every rupture can reveal new paths or threats. Combat, which could have been just a secondary detail, surprised me with its fluidity and variety of enemies. Defending your factory from alien hordes while the planet collapses is a unique experience. Of course, I still saw some necessary adjustments, like grenade cooldown times, but that doesn't take away from the shine of the action, which blends well with the tension of survival. The cooperative modes promise to be the big differentiator. I imagine endless sessions with friends, trying to keep factories running while chaos spreads. It's a type of gameplay that demands communication, strategy, and, mainly, a lot of improvisation. Everything that makes a multiplayer survival memorable. Overall, StarRupture's gameplay delivers a rich experience, mixing the satisfaction of building complex factories with the adrenaline of surviving a planet in constant collapse. It's a game that makes me curious to see how every detail will evolve, especially when catastrophes become even more unpredictable and challenging. The graphics, from what I could feel in the demo, arrive with that next-gen showcase ambition, and this matches perfectly with the planet that wants to crush you. The impression is that Creepy Jar wants the visuals to be part of the challenge, not just a pretty backdrop. And it makes sense for them to harp on the point of it being built from the ground up on Unreal Engine 5, because the initial impact is quite strong. What pleases me most is the art direction leaning towards a cold and mineral sci-fi, rather than that clean, perfect factory colorfulness. From what was shown in the environmental material, the team was heavily inspired by the natural landscape of Iceland, and that explains this almost prehistoric vibe of the rocks and valleys. To me, this gives it personality. It doesn't look like a generic survival map. It looks like a place with weight and texture. In the demo, the lighting and the scale of the scenery are the two things that most sell them. Fantasy of being in a huge and hostile world. Even without constantly gawking at screenshots, you can notice that the game wants to make you feel small in the face of the planet. And this fits with the concept of ruptures, changing the environment and transforming what was a safe route into a dangerous area. When the game pushes you to run and improvise, the visuals help convey that sensation of, we're screwed now. A detail I found very clever and very video gamey is how the resources seem to have their own visual identity. In game promotions, they mention that even titanium was designed with a shape inspired by basalt columns, with a shine based on real materials, and this is the kind of thing that helps immensely in reading the world. It's not realism for realism's sake, it's a visual style that communicates gameplay. The fauna and flora also seem to have been designed to reinforce discomfort, not to be cute or decorative. The released material speaks of life adapting to an unstable world, with many animals being hostile and some not being a real threat. And this variation makes the setting more believable. In practice, this helps the game have contrast. Not everything is just stone and lava. There is an ecosystem there. Now, looking at it as a player, what I demand most from these graphics is clarity. And overall, I liked what I saw. Since the game sells itself as a first-person open-world base-building game with combat and exploration, I want to identify enemies, resources, and factory parts without fighting against excessive effects or blown-out shadows. In the demo, the feeling was more readable and immersive than polluted and confused, which is a victory for a game of this type. My only hesitation is that this level of visual ambition usually exacts a price in optimization and consistency, especially in early access. So I'm curious to see how it will run when the base is huge and the planet is in total chaos mode. They themselves have already released screenshots captured from a work-in-progress build, so it's safe to assume there is still fine-tuning coming. If they can maintain this standard of atmosphere and readability while refining performance, the game has everything to become a visual benchmark within the genre. Playing the demo, the feeling I had regarding performance was of a game almost there, but still clearly in the adjustment phase. For a good part of the time, especially when exploring more calmly and building the first structures, the FPS seems stable enough not to get in the way. But you could feel that any increase in scene complexity started to exact a price. Where I felt the impact most was in those micro stutters, that annoying stuttering that doesn't drop the FPS completely, but breaks the flow. In moments of turning the camera quickly or changing areas, it seemed like the game took a breather to load the rest of the world. It didn't get to the point of making me stop playing, but it took away a bit of the sensation of fluidity that the game's visuals promise. When the base started to grow and I entered sections with more active structures and particles on the screen, more noticeable drops were apparent. Nothing like turning into a slideshow, but that downgrade from, wow, smooth as butter, to, okay, now I feel the weight of the game. It's the kind of thing that in early access, I kind of already expect, but it raises a red flag for the late game when everything will be much bigger. In combat moments, performance walked a somewhat fine line. When there were few enemies, the experience was very smooth, but it only took combining visual effects, gunfire, and moving scenery for the game to lose a bit of consistency. It didn't reach the point of making me miss shots due to heavy freezing, but it gave that constant feeling that anything more could push it over the limit. Playing with the graphics options helped, but didn't solve everything. Lowering shadows, draw distance, and some effects made the game more stable, but even so, the occasional stutter kept appearing here and there. It gave off that impression of, the engine is heavy, optimization hasn't caught up yet. Something very typical of a UE5 project with a large map and many variables running at the same time. Despite this, in several moments, performance simply vanished from my mind, in a good way. Walking around the map, observing the horizon, and returning to the factory with everything working created an immersion good enough to make me forget the problems for a few minutes. It was only when I went back to the more chaotic part, lots of construction, lots happening, that my brain remembered, yeah, it still needs polishing. In the end, the individual experience I had with the demo was of a visually ambitious game, already playable and fun, but one that doesn't yet convey that confidence of long-term stability. You can easily sense the potential, and it's nothing that kills the desire to play, but it is clearly a case where optimization will decide if StarRupture will be addictive or addictive but kind of tiring for the PC and one's patience as the hours go by. It is worth buying StarRupture at launch if you are one of those people who loves jumping into early access from day one and enjoys following the game's evolution with the community. In the demo, you can already see that the foundation is solid and addictive, with that mix of automation and survival that hooks you for hours. But if you prefer something polished and without the need to deal with initial bugs, it's better to wait a few months for them to adjust performance and quality of life. The game is clearly for fans of Satisfactory or Factorio who want something in first person with more action and environmental chaos. I felt in the demo that it is perfect for those who like to optimize factories while the world tries to destroy everything. But it is not for those seeking a relaxed experience without pressure or constant urgency. It's not worth buying at launch if inconsistent performance drives you crazy, because the demo already had stutters and drops that break the flow at key moments. For me, playing on a mid-range PC, it was playable but frustrating during peaks of chaos. So if you have top-tier hardware and patience for updates, go for it. Otherwise, wait for optimizations. It is recommended for those who love chaotic cooperative multiplayer, like sessions with friends defending the base from ruptures while laughing at the disaster. The demo showed that co-op has huge potential for emergent stories, but solo play might get repetitive faster if you don't enjoy resource grinding and constant expansion. It is worth waiting if you want to see more content unlocked, because the demo is just an initial slice, and early access will expand mechanics and biomes. I would keep an eye on the first post-launch patches to confirm if they prioritize what the community demands most, like better enemy AI and variety of events. The ideal audience is survival builders who tolerate imperfections in exchange for innovation, especially those who played Green Hell and want to see Creepy Jar in sci-fi. It is not for casuals who want hand-holding tutorials or linear progression without the risk of losing everything in a catastrophe. I think I will buy it at launch due to the excitement I got from the demo and the dev's track record, but only because I'm already invested in the hype. If you are more cautious, wishlist it and check the reviews in the first few days. The game has the soul to become a hit, but it needs to prove its stability to be worth the full price right out of the gate.
Great.